You're too small. I can't take it. I can't take being the woman who makes a man feel less.
You're right. I am too small.
But not in the way you think.
You're too small. I can't take it, Freya Lundgren whispered, her voice breaking as she stood in the doorway of the Montana ranch house, her 6'3" frame towering over the man who'd sent for her, Wade Garrison, the rancher who'd promised her a new life but hadn't warned her about the one thing that would shatter her last piece of hope. The giant mail-order bride had crossed an ocean and a continent to escape the cruel whispers about her size, only to arrive at Garrison Ridge and realize that her new husband stood barely 6 feet tall, a full 5 inches shorter than the woman he'd married, sight unseen. "You're too small for me," she said again, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks as she clutched her single travel bag, ready to board the next train back to a life of loneliness. "Every man who's ever looked at me has felt small. I can't take it anymore. I can't take being the woman who makes a man feel less." But Wade Garrison, the rancher who'd buried one wife and sworn he'd never love again, refused to stop. He stepped closer to the giant mail-order bride, not away. Closer, even as she moaned about their impossible difference. Closer, even as logic screamed that a woman of her size and a man of his stature could never make sense to the gossiping town of Copper Creek. "You're right," Wade said quietly, his calloused rancher's hands steady even as hers shook. "I'm too small." "But not in the way you think." The giant mail-order bride froze, her bag slipping from her fingers. The late afternoon sun cut through the windows behind Wade, turning him into a silhouette, and for a moment Freya couldn't see his face, couldn't read whether this was pity or something else entirely. The ranch house smelled like leather and coffee and wood smoke, masculine and foreign, and she felt like an intruder in a space that would never be hers. Her heart hammered against her ribs, that old familiar panic rising like floodwater. She'd felt this before, the moment right before rejection, the split second before a man's eyes changed from curiosity to disgust. "I should go," she said, bending to retrieve her bag, her blonde hair falling forward to hide her face. "Before the town sees me. Before you have to explain." "Explain what?" Wade's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "Explain why you ordered a bride and got a monster instead." The word hung in the air like gun smoke. Monster. She'd heard it before, whispered behind hands in Minnesota, muttered by boys who'd courted her as a joke, spat by her own mother who'd called her unnatural and cursed by God for some sin. Freya had learned to carry the word like a scar. Permanent and defining, Wade moved then, faster than she expected for a man who'd spent all day working cattle. He crossed the space between them and took her bag from her hands, setting it down with deliberate care. Then he did something no man had ever done before. He looked up at her, really looked, his brown eyes steady and unflinching, and he smiled. "You're not a monster, Freya. You're just surrounded by blind people." Her breath caught. "You don't understand. You can't. You're too small." He tilted his head, still smiling that strange, sad smile. "Yeah, you said that. And you're right. I'm too small. My courage is too small for how brave you are. My imagination was too small to picture someone as magnificent as you. My life before today was too small to hold someone like you in it." Freya's hands trembled. This was worse than rejection. This was hope, and hope was the cruelest thing a man could offer a woman who'd learned to live without it. "Stop," she whispered. "Please stop." "Why?" "Because when you see me tomorrow, really see me, you'll regret those words. They always do." Wade reached up, and this was the moment that changed everything. He reached up and placed his hand against her cheek, and his palm was rough from rope and weather, warm against her skin. "Then let me regret it tomorrow. But tonight, Freya Lundgren, let me be a man who sees you exactly as you are and calls you beautiful." The tears came then, hot and unstoppable, years of them, an ocean of grief for the girl who'd grown too tall too fast, who'd been told she was taking up space that belonged to someone else, who'd learned to fold herself smaller and smaller until there was almost nothing left. She cried, standing in a stranger's house in Montana, this rancher who was too small looking up at her like she was the sunset instead of the storm. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted through her tears. "I don't know how to be wanted." "Then we'll figure it out together," Wade said simply. "But Freya, you need to understand something right now before we go any further." Her heart seized. Here it comes. The conditions, the rules, the ways she'd need to shrink herself to fit into his world. "I didn't send for a mail-order bride because I needed a housekeeper or a cook or someone to warm my bed," Wade continued, his hand still against her face, his thumb brushing away her tears. "I sent for you because this ranch, this life, it's too big for one person. It's too hard, too lonely. I needed a partner. Someone strong enough to stand beside me when the cattle are dying and the winter won't break and the bank is breathing down my neck. I needed someone who wouldn't shatter the first time things got difficult." He paused, and his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. "I needed you, Freya, exactly as you are. And if you get back on that train, I won't stop you. But I will spend the rest of my life knowing I let the strongest woman I ever met walk away because I was too much of a coward to fight for her." The silence stretched between them, broken only by the tick of a clock somewhere in the house and the distant lowing of cattle in the fields. Freya felt something crack open inside her chest, some locked door she'd barred shut years ago. This man, this rancher who was too small, was offering her something she'd never had before. Not just acceptance, not just tolerance, but desire, want, need. "The town," she started, but Wade shook his head. "The town will talk no matter what we do. Let them." His hand dropped from her face, but his eyes never left hers. "The question isn't what they think, Freya. The question is what you want. Do you want to go back to Minnesota and spend the rest of your life making yourself small for people who'll never see your worth? Or do you want to stay here and be exactly as big as you were meant to be?" Freya looked around the ranch house, seeing it clearly for the first time. It was simple but sturdy, built by hands that knew hard work. The furniture was rough-hewn but carefully made. The windows faced east to catch the sunrise over the mountains. This wasn't a prison. This was a possibility. She looked back at Wade, this man who refused to stop, who'd looked at her and seen strength instead of strangeness. And for the first time in her 28 years, Freya Lundgren made a choice that wasn't about protecting herself from pain. She made a choice about reaching for something more. "I'll stay," she whispered. "But Wade, I need you to understand something too. I've been hurt. I've been mocked and rejected and told I was wrong so many times, I started to believe it. If I stay, if I try this and you change your mind, I won't. You don't know that. You can't promise. You're right, I can't promise I won't make mistakes. I can't promise I'll always say the right thing or know how to help when you're hurting. But Freya, I can promise you this. I will never, not once, not ever ask you to be smaller than you are." The words settled over her like a blanket, warm and heavy and real. Freya took a shaky breath and nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Wade smiled then, a real smile this time, and picked up her bag again. "Come on," he said, heading toward the stairs. "Let me show you your room. You must be exhausted from the journey." "My room." She followed him, confused. You thought we'd share a bed right away?" Wade glanced back at her, one eyebrow raised. "Freya, I might be a rancher, but I'm not a brute. You've traveled 3,000 miles to marry a stranger. You can have your own space until you're ready. No pressure, no expectations. Just time to figure out if we can actually work." And there it was, the final crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. This man, who had every legal right to claim her as his wife tonight, was giving her a choice, giving her time, treating her like she mattered beyond the words on a marriage certificate. Freya followed Wade Garrison up the stairs of his ranch house, her bag in his hands, her future uncertain, but no longer impossible. And for the first time since she was a little girl, before the world told her she was wrong, Freya felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. She felt hope. The first week at Garrison Ridge taught Freya Lundgren one undeniable truth. Montana didn't care how big you were. The wind cut through everyone the same. The work broke your back whether you were 6 feet or 5. And the loneliness, that vast prairie loneliness, swallowed whole anyone foolish enough to think size mattered out here. She woke before dawn each morning to the sound of Wade moving through the house below, his boots on the wooden floors, the clank of the coffee pot, the creak of the door as he headed out to start his day. And each morning she lay in her small room. Her room, he'd promised, no pressure, wondering how long this fragile peace would last before he realized his mistake. She made herself useful. That was the plan. Be so valuable he couldn't send her back even if he wanted to. By the 3rd day, Wade found her in the barn, lifting feed sacks he normally needed 2 men to handle, stacking them like they weighed nothing. She felt his eyes on her, and waited for the comment, the joke, the inevitable moment when her strength became something shameful instead of helpful. But Wade just nodded and said, "That'll save us 3 hours." "Thank you." Then he went back to mucking stalls like it was the most natural thing in the world. His wife doing the work of 3 men. By the 5th day, she'd repaired half the fence line on the north pasture, replaced the barn door that had been hanging crooked for months, and hauled enough firewood to last through winter. She worked until her muscles screamed and sweat soaked through her dress because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering that this was temporary, that eventually Wade would see what everyone else saw, a woman too big to love, too strong to want, too much to keep. "You trying to kill yourself?" Wade's voice came from behind her as she lifted another post into place, her shoulders burning. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple, and she hadn't realized how long she'd been out here. "I'm trying to earn my keep," she said without turning around. "You earned your keep the day you agreed to stay." He moved closer, and she could feel the heat of him even in the cool evening air. "But you're not going to be much good to anyone if you work yourself into an early grave." "I'm fine, Freya." Something in his voice made her stop, made her finally turn to face him. Wade looked tired, dust on his face, his shirt dark with sweat from his own day's work. But his eyes were gentle, worried even. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Trying to prove something." "You don't have to prove anything to me." The words hit her like a slap because they were so obviously a lie, so clearly what men said when they wanted you to stop showing them who you really were. "Yes, I do," she said, and her voice came out harder than she meant it. "I have to prove I'm worth keeping, that I'm not a burden, that you didn't make a mistake sending for me." Wade was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, Freya felt her heart start to crack. Here it comes, she thought. Here's where he admits he's having second thoughts. Here's where he tells her gently that maybe she should think about going back to Minnesota after all. "You want to know what my mistake was?" Wade said finally. She braced herself. "What?" "Thinking I could hide how I feel about you for even a week." He stepped closer. Close enough that she had to look down to meet his eyes. And God, she hated that, hated always looking down, always being reminded of the space she took up that she shouldn't. "Freya, you're not a burden. You're not too much. And the only thing you need to prove to me is that you can stop trying so damn hard to be something you're not." "What am I trying to be?" "Small, apologetic, like you're sorry for existing." His hand came up, rough fingers touching her jaw, tilting her face so she had to meet his eyes. "I see you, Freya. I see you making yourself smaller at the dinner table. I see you ducking through doorways that are plenty tall enough. I see you holding back your strength like it's something shameful. And it breaks my heart, because the woman I married, the woman I'm falling in love with, she's powerful and fierce, and she doesn't apologize for taking up space." The words "falling in love with" hit her like a lightning strike. "Wade, you can't what?" "Love you? Too late. I looked at you that first day, standing in my doorway, ready to run, and something in me recognized something in you. We're both people the world tried to break. But Freya, you're still standing. You're still here. And that makes you the bravest person I know." She shook her head, tears burning behind her eyes. "You don't understand what it's like. You're a man. You're normal. You fit. Normal?" Wade laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Freya, I'm a 34-year-old rancher who lost his wife and baby in childbirth and spent 3 years talking to ghosts because I couldn't face the silence. I sent for a mail-order bride because I couldn't figure out how to be a human being anymore. I'm so far from normal I can't even see it from here. That's different. It's not different. It's just pain. And we've both got plenty of it. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and the gentleness of it made her want to sob. But here's what I know. I know that when you walk into a room, I can breathe again. I know that when I hear you laugh, and you hardly ever laugh, but when you do, it sounds like music. I know that watching you work, seeing you do things I could never do, it doesn't make me feel small. It makes me feel lucky. Lucky, she repeated, like the word was in a foreign language. Lucky that you chose to stay. Lucky that you're giving me a chance. Lucky that maybe, if I don't screw this up, you might let me love you the way you deserve to be loved. Freya felt something break inside her. Some dam she'd built to hold back years of wanting and hoping and needing. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to be loved, Wade. Every time I've tried, every time I've let myself hope, it's ended with someone telling me I'm too much, too big, too strong. Stop! Wade's voice was firm now, almost harsh. Stop telling me what other people said. I don't care what they said. I'm not them. And Freya, I need you to hear this, really hear it. You are not too much. You're exactly enough. You say that now, I'll say it tomorrow. I'll say it next week. I'll say it in 10 years when you're sick of hearing it. He moved even closer, and now she could smell him. Leather and sweat and something uniquely Wade, something that made her head spin. But I need you to stop waiting for me to reject you, because it's not going to happen. And every time you pull away, every time you make yourself smaller, you're telling me you don't believe I mean what I say. The truth of that hit her hard. He was right. She'd been waiting for him to fail, expecting him to prove he was like all the others. But Wade Garrison wasn't like the others. He'd had a week to send her back, a week to realize his mistake. And instead he was standing here in the fading light, telling her he was falling in love with her. I'm scared, she admitted. And the words cost her everything. Good, so am I. Wade smiled then. That sad, beautiful smile that made her chest ache. Being scared means it matters. But Freya, we can be scared together. We don't have to do this alone. She looked down at him, this man who was too small, who refused to stop believing in her even when she couldn't believe in herself. And slowly, carefully, like she was handling something precious and breakable, Freya reached out and placed her hand over his, where it rested against her face. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Okay, I'll try. I'll try to believe you. I'll try to stop waiting for you to leave. Wade's smile turned real then, bright and relieved, and he pulled her down. She had to bend, had to fold herself to reach him. And he kissed her. It was gentle at first, testing, asking permission. But then Freya made a sound low in her throat and kissed him back, and gentle became something else entirely. She lifted him, couldn't help it. He was so much lighter than her, and his legs wrapped around her waist like it was the most natural thing in the world. And for the first time in her life, Freya Lundgren wasn't apologizing for her strength. She was using it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Wade was grinning like a fool. See, not too small. Just right, Freya laughed then, really laughed, and the sound startled her. When was the last time she'd laughed? When was the last time she'd felt this light, this free, this alive? Come on, Wade said, sliding down but keeping her hand in his. Let's go inside. You need to eat something, and I make a decent stew. They walked back to the house together, his small hand in her large one, and Freya felt something shift in her chest. Not hope, not quite. Something stronger than hope. Something like belief. Maybe, just maybe, this too small rancher and this too big bride could build something real, something lasting, something that didn't require either of them to be anything other than exactly what they were. But as they reached the porch, Wade stopped suddenly, his body going tense. Freya followed his gaze and saw what had caught his attention. There, tied to the fence post, was a horse she didn't recognize. And sitting on the porch, waiting with the patience of someone who'd been there a while, was a woman Freya had never seen before. The woman stood as they approached, and even in the dim light Freya could see the resemblance. Same sharp features, same critical eyes, same thin-lipped expression that said she'd already judged you and found you wanting. "Wade," the woman said, her voice cold as creek water in January. "We need to talk about this situation." Wade's hand tightened around Freya's. "Constance, what are you doing here?" "Saving you from making the biggest mistake of your life," Constance Hartford said, her eyes raking over Freya with undisguised disgust. "The whole town is talking, Wade, and what they're saying isn't pretty." Freya felt Wade's hand tighten around hers, but she was already pulling away, already stepping back into the shadows where women like her belonged. Of course the town was talking. Of course someone had come to tell Wade what a spectacle he was making of himself. She'd been stupid to think a week of kindness meant anything. She'd been foolish to believe that a man could look at her and see something worth keeping. "Constance, this is my wife," Wade said, and his voice had gone quiet in that dangerous way Freya was learning meant he was angry. "And what the town thinks about my marriage is none of the town's damn business." Constance Hartford laughed, sharp and brittle. "Your wife? Wait, look at her. She's a giant. She's unnatural. My God, she could break you in half." "She could," Wade agreed calmly. "But she won't, because unlike some people, Freya has a kind heart underneath all that strength." The barb landed, and Constance's face flushed. "This isn't about kindness, Wade. This is about propriety, about what's appropriate. You're making yourself a laughingstock. People are saying terrible things. Then maybe people should keep their mouths shut about things that don't concern them. It concerns all of us when one of our most respected ranchers brings shame on this community. Think about your reputation. Think about your late wife's memory. Don't!" Wade's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare bring Sarah into this. Sarah has nothing to do with my marriage to Freya." Constance pressed on, sensing weakness. "Sarah was a proper woman, delicate, refined, everything a rancher's wife should be. And now you've replaced her with this." She gestured at Freya like she was livestock being appraised. "The men at the saloon are taking bets on how long before she kills you in your sleep. The women are afraid to come near your property. And the Reverend himself said it's against God's natural order for a woman to tower over her husband like some kind of freak of nature." Each word landed like a stone, building a wall between Freya and the small flame of hope Wade had lit inside her. This was reality. This was what she'd known was coming. The town's judgment, the cruel laughter. The reminder that she was wrong, had always been wrong, would always be wrong. "I should go," Freya said quietly, and she was proud that her voice didn't shake. "Mrs. Hartford is right. I don't belong here. Like hell you don't." Wade spun to face her, his eyes blazing. "Freya, don't you dare let this bitter woman tell you where you belong. She's not saying anything I haven't heard before." Freya tried to smile, but it felt like her face was cracking. "It's fine, Wade, you tried. You were kind to me. But we both know this was never going to work." "No, we don't know that. You're scared. You're listening to the same poison you've been drinking your whole life, and I won't let you do it anymore." Constance made a disgusted sound. "Oh, how touching! The giant bride and her too small husband. Wait, be reasonable. Send her back before this gets worse, before you become a permanent joke. I'm trying to help you. You're not trying to help me." Wade turned back to Constance, and there was something fierce in his expression that made even the older woman take a step back. "You're trying to protect yourself. Because if I can marry whoever I want and ignore what people say, then maybe other folks will start doing the same. Maybe your precious social order, where you get to decide who fits and who doesn't, might start to crumble. That's ridiculous, is it? Tell me, Constance, when's the last time you did something that made you happy instead of something that made you look good? When's the last time you chose love over reputation?" Constance's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "This isn't about me. No, it's not. It's about me and my wife. And the only people who get a say in this marriage are standing right here." Wade moved to Freya then, reaching up to take her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Don't you dare give up on us because of what some small-minded people think. Don't you dare let them win. Wade, you heard what she said. The whole town can go to hell. His voice was fierce, his eyes locked on hers. Freya, I told you I wouldn't ask you to be smaller, but I'm asking you to be braver. I'm asking you to stand with me and tell them all that we don't care what they think. That our marriage, our life, our love is ours and nobody else's. Love, she repeated, and the word felt foreign on her tongue. You said that word again. Because I mean it. I love you, Freya Lundgren. I love your strength and your courage, and the way you make me feel like I can face anything, as long as you're beside me. And I don't care if I have to spend the rest of my life proving it to you, I will. Tears streamed down Freya's face, hot and unstoppable. But I'm too big. You're too small. Everyone can see it. Then let them see it. Wade's voice softened, became gentle. Let them see that love doesn't measure by inches. Let them see that a strong woman and a good man can build something beautiful. Let them see that we don't fit their rules, and we're happy anyway. Behind them, Constance made a sound of disgust. This is absurd. Wade, I'm warning you, if you continue with this farce, there will be consequences. The town will turn against you. Your business will suffer. You'll be ostracized. Then I'll be ostracized with the woman I love. Wade didn't even look at her, his eyes still fixed on Freya. Nothing you say matters, Constance. Nothing the town says matters. The only thing that matters is standing right here, deciding whether she's brave enough to choose herself for once in her life. And that was the moment. That was when Freya Lundgren stopped running from who she was. She looked down at Wade Garrison, this rancher who was too small, who refused to stop fighting for her, even when she'd given up on herself. She looked at Constance Hartford, with her pinched face and her poisonous words. And she made a choice. You're right, Freya said, and her voice was steady now, strong. I am a giant. I'm bigger than most men. I can lift things they can't lift. I can do work they can't do. And you know what? I'm done apologizing for it. She turned to Wade, and something fierce and wild bloomed in her chest. You said you loved me. You said you want me exactly as I am. So here I am, Wade Garrison, all 6 feet and 3 inches of me. All my strength and all my scars, and all the parts of me the world called wrong. If you want me, if you really want me, then I'm staying. And I don't care what anyone says about it. Wade's face broke into the most beautiful smile she'd ever seen. I really want you. Then you've got me. She reached down and lifted him clean off the ground, pulling him to her, and she kissed him hard and fierce and without any apology at all. She kissed him like she meant it, like she believed it, like she was claiming him as much as he was claiming her. And when she set him down, both of them breathing hard, she turned to Constance with her head high. You can tell the town whatever you want, Mrs. Hartford. Tell them I'm a giant. Tell them I'm unnatural. Tell them I'm a freak. I've heard it all before, and I'm still standing. And I'll still be standing tomorrow and the next day, and every day after that, right here beside my husband on our ranch. And if that bothers you, well, you don't have to visit. Constance's face had gone purple with rage. You'll regret this. Both of you. Mark my words, this will end in disaster. Maybe, Wade said cheerfully. But it'll be our disaster. Now get off my property before I have my wife throw you off. Freya couldn't help it. She laughed. Actually laughed at the look on Constance Hartford's face, at the absurdity of it all, at the sheer relief of finally stopping the endless performance of making herself smaller. Wade joined her, his laughter mixing with hers, and together they watched Constance storm off to her horse and ride away into the gathering darkness. When she was gone, Wade turned to Freya with a grin. So that happened. That happened. Freya shook her head, still half disbelieving. Wade, you just told off the most powerful woman in Copper Creek. I just told off a bully. There's a difference. He took her hand again, his fingers threading through hers. Come on, let's go inside. That stew's probably cold by now, but we can heat it up. They walked into the house together, and this time when Freya crossed the threshold, she didn't duck. She didn't make herself smaller. She walked in at her full height, shoulders back, head high, and it felt like coming home. Over dinner, reheated stew that was better than anything Freya had tasted in years, Wade told her about the ranch, about his plans for spring, about the life they could build together if she wanted it. And Freya, for the first time, let herself want it. Let herself imagine a future here, with this man, building something real. "The town really will talk," she said eventually, pushing her empty bowl away. "Constance wasn't lying about that. Let them talk. We'll be too busy living to listen." Wade reached across the table and took her hand. "Freya, I meant what I said. Every word. I love you. And I know it's only been a week, and I know that's crazy, but I can't help how I feel." "It is crazy," she agreed, but she was smiling. "We barely know each other. Then we'll spend the rest of our lives getting to know each other better. Starting now." He stood and moved around the table, and when he reached her, he pulled her to her feet. "Dance with me. There's no music. We'll make our own." And so they danced in the kitchen of the ranch house, Wade humming an old tune, while Freya held him close, her arms around him, his head against her chest. They swayed together in the lamplight, two people who didn't fit the world's expectations, but fit each other perfectly. "You know what I think?" Wade said after a while. "What?" "I think you're not too big. I think the world's just been too small to see how amazing you are." Freya felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were different tears. These were the kind that came from joy, from relief, from the overwhelming sensation of being seen and valued and loved. "And you're not too small," she whispered back. "You're exactly big enough to hold all of me." They stood there together as the night deepened around them, a giant mail-order bride and a rancher who refused to stop believing in her. And in that moment, in that house, in that life they were choosing together, they were exactly what they needed to be, exactly enough. 3 months later, when Freya walked through Copper Creek at Wade's side, head high and unashamed, she saw the stares, heard the whispers, felt the judgment rolling off the townspeople like heat off summer pavement. But she also saw something else. She saw the young girl watching her with wide eyes and hope on her face, the girl who was already taller than her brothers and had started to hunch to hide it. She saw the woman who smiled at her shyly, the one whose husband walked 3 steps ahead like he was embarrassed to be seen with her. She saw the people who were trapped in their own too small lives, afraid to be anything other than what the world demanded. And Freya realized something important. She wasn't just living for herself anymore. She was living proof that you could be different and be loved, that you could take up space and be wanted, that the right person wouldn't ask you to shrink, they'd celebrate every inch of you. When Wade squeezed her hand and looked up at her with that smile that said she was his whole world, Freya squeezed back. And she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Too big. Maybe. Too strong. Probably. Too much. Never. Not for Wade Garrison. Not for the man who'd looked at a giant mail-order bride and seen exactly what he needed. Not for the rancher who'd refused to stop believing that love was bigger than all of them. And in the end, that was all that mattered. If you loved this story of the giant mail-order bride and the rancher who refused to stop loving her, don't forget to turn on the notification bell for more Western American tales, mail-order bride stories, and cowboy romances that will touch your heart. Because every week, we bring you stories of the frontier, where love was wild, life was hard, and the strongest hearts always found their way home.